On.
Hey, hello. Let's try this. Hello, everyone. We do have a deal done. Let's talk about it, Matt. We're talking about trades, as you could all see in the title line, and we're 8 days away. So, Matthew, go ahead. Good to have you back, bud.
Yeah, we had what was it? It was Saturday night, I believe,
Yeah.
that the Red Sox and Nationals struck a deal, sending Connolly Early to the Washington Nationals in exchange for third baseman at the time, going to be second baseman for the Red Sox, Curtis Mead.
Hmm.
Mead Mead's a guy who's a top 40 prospect formerly. He's been traded a couple of times. Most famously, Tampa Bay traded Christopher Sanchez for Curtis Mead in a deal that sent Sanchez to Philadelphia. Obviously, everybody knows who Christopher Sanchez is now. Racked
Hmm.
up his 13th win in Philadelphia last night, one of the leading candidates for the NL Cy Young race.
Hmm.
So if history tells you anything, Connolly Early is going to be vying for NL Cy Young votes here in a couple of years.
In a couple of years, yeah. It's. I will tell you this. Mead. I've seen Mead play a lot. He is a solid defenseman. He can play defense really solid. Um, he's a streaky hitter. He's got pop. He can hit the ball out of the park. Um, I when I saw the trade, I thought, of all the things you could be doing, this is not the. I mean, he doesn't start for the Nationals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Uh, it was
the
kind of head scratching to me. I don't get it.
the general consensus, I think, was that Boston had overpaid, and I think, from the outside looking in, that's fair. When you look at this 1-to-1 deal, it feels like Washington is getting the better player right now. And that's understandable because Connolly Early is a guy who's 24 years old. He's got a
Mhm.
3.44 ERA. He has been really good in Major League Baseball, but he did have his own issues.
Mhm.
He struggled with the home run ball at times, and there have been times where he has struggled to get consistent depth into games,
Mhm.
where maybe you hear the phrase five and dive in
Right.
terms of pitchers. He had a tendency to get in that kind of mode at
Mhm.
times. But he's really good under the hood. Like you like what he's able to do, how he's able to spin the
Mhm.
baseball, all that stuff. And Curtis Mead's a guy I think people were looking at this like the Red Sox just traded this guy for like a 31-year-old who's having a breakout year, and that's not the case. Mead's 25. He's under control until 2031, and you
Mhm.
look at his baseball savant, and I understand that baseball's not played on a stat sheet, but things look really good under the hood for Curtis Mead, and he has
Mhm.
metrics that line up for Fenway Park in terms of pull power, getting the
Right.
ball in the air. He's got a really flat swing, and Craig Breslow went on the broadcast yesterday and talked
Mhm.
about what was attractive about Mead,
Mhm.
and he talked about swing decisions, and he talked about his ability to hit pop and where he's at currently in terms of major league ranks.
Mhm.
There's a lot of stuff that he ranks second on in Boston's lineup right
Mhm.
now. He's a power threat from the right-handed side,
Mhm.
and relative to the other options that are available, he fits the cost there was correct because
Mhm.
they called Houston in regards to Jeremy Pena.
Mhm.
Houston essentially said no deal in terms of wanting to potentially trade Jeremy Pena. They called the Angels about Zach Neto. The reported asking price was the third overall prospect in baseball in Franklin
Mhm.
Arias. And that's just not a deal that's going to get done because Zach
Mhm.
Neto is a guy that does have a lot of swing and miss in his game. And you are banking on almost exclusively the power numbers.
Mhm.
So when you look at cost relative to the rest of Major League Baseball, and talked about Shea Langoliers in the pre-show, he's now a guy that's hurt, so that drives up your cost on all catching related needs, and that
Mhm.
was a primary position of concern. So Mead gives you the power from the right hand side that Boston's been looking for at a price that, albeit looks steep, isn't as bad as what some other people appear to be asking.
No, I think. Look, I said I saw a lot of Kerr's meat. The one thing that Nationals have is a glut of infielders, and
Mhm.
and sometimes that plays. Uh, Mead's come off the bench. He started games. He's done stuff. You see that the kid has talent. Okay, and sometimes you have to trust scouts and the analytics. And sometimes, if you look at it, as you were talking a minute ago, it's a good trade for both sides. It's a low impact trade that could be high potential for both teams.
Yeah, I think what gets lost in the shuffle of all this is you were talking about how Washington has that surplus of infielders,
Hmm.
both in the majors and waiting in the minors as well.
Right. Hmm.
It's an area where they can afford to lose a bat.
Hmm.
Boston has a surplus of left-handed starting pitching. The
Uh-huh.
reason that Connolly Early was the name that got traded is because of what Jake Bennett's done over the last month and a half and how fantastic he's been. If Jake Bennett and Peyton Tolley aren't pitching the way that they're pitching, then Connolly Early's
Mhm.
probably not on the block. He's probably not the one getting traded.
Right.
But they've both pitched very well, and they've kind of established themselves. And if we're just being honest, they fit a little bit more of the profile that Craig Breslow likes in terms of
Hmm.
size and extension more than Connolly
Hmm.
Early does.
Right.
So it fits his mold a little bit better, but they
Hmm.
both traded from surplus. I think the name and honestly, just the overall media attention that the
Hmm.
market of Boston gets makes Connolly Early maybe feel like a bigger name than and a little bit more valuable than maybe he
Hmm.
was.
Possibly. And in fairness to me, like I said, he he's one of those kids that they like, but they've also got four guys in the minors who are ready to, you know, take that step. And I think that they felt, you know what, we'll take the pitching, and we'll go from there. I mean, that's kind of the new the new the team that's in heavily involved with the new Nationals organization are all former Tampa Bay guys,
Hmm.
and they all love pitchers, and they all love the opportunity to take pitchers and hopefully resurrect their lives and careers.
Well,
Or young pitchers, is that in that regard?
yeah, Paul Taboni, the current general manager, I believe is his
Hmm.
title,
Hmm.
was under Craig Breslow in Boston.
Hmm.
That's where he came from, and you
Hmm.
see the pitching system that they were able to build together
Yeah.
in Boston,
Hmm.
and the ability to trade from that surplus. So
Hmm.
it fits right in line. And when you look at Washington, just in this year specifically,
Hmm.
they've been the best offense in baseball, but their pitching staff has
Hmm.
been just absolutely horrific. So
Oh
this
God.
gives you a guy that once he comes back, he's going to kind of fit into the top
Hmm.
two or three of that rotation pretty quickly.
Sure. Sure. And they've the annoying part. I believe I'm not totally sure they did at one point. I'm not totally sure at this point, but they led. We're talking about Nationals now. They led Major League Baseball in blown saves.
Yeah, and this is they also lead Major League Baseball in games with double digit runs scored.
Right?
So the offense and the hitting has not been the problem. I mean, C.J.
No.
Abrams in the month of July has a 1,600 OPS.
Right.
Like he's leading Major League Baseball in RBIs, and that's not even including what James Wood does on a night in night out basis.
Right. And CJ is a pretty damn good shortstop as well.
Yeah, he's a name that's still getting floated around in trade talks. I think mainly because Washington is unsure of their ability. Maybe not unsure of their ability, but unsure if they want to tie themselves to him long term. Because in terms of his defensive metrics at shortstop,
Hmm.
I think the general consensus is that eventually he will change positions.
Hmm.
Maybe it's the outfield. I don't know. But the general consensus is that he probably is not going to stick at shortstop long term. But
Yeah.
that bat has a potential, and it's been mentioned in terms of the Red Sox that This deal for Curtis Mead does not mean that they won't circle back on a potential C.J. Abrams deal. And if C.J. Abrams were to become available and say they did do a deal with Boston, Franklin Urias would be the lead piece of that package.
CJ, I'm trying to remember whether it's spring training or a couple of times. He's played center field.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's not where they normally put him. But the idea when they went out in the offseason and they signed Gavin Lux was to put Gavin in the infield and move CJ to the outfield and see how that worked. Well, the unfortunate thing for CJ was, and for Gavin, is he got hurt.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Gavin Lux is with the Rays. I'm sorry. Who did they trade? I'm sorry, they traded for someone. Anyway, the guy is on has been on the injured reserve before the season, and he hasn't even stepped into it. So CJ is an incredibly athletic young man, and I do believe that as time goes on, there will be a place. He's kind of like in the old days throwback. It's like Robin Yount, right? You take your shortstop and you take the kid who plays shortstop and put him in the outfield because he's got the arm, he's got the range, and I think that he will make an outstanding outfielder if and when they decide to put him there. He plays a very good defense in keeping balls from going into the outfield. Now I say that because this. His biggest mistake is a mistake that Trey Turner used to make when he was with the Nationals. They have the speed and the ability to get the ball. They just don't sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes they don't know when to just put it in their pocket and not throw it. And, if I have any criticism of C.J. Abrams, it's he tries to make, he'll make a fantastic stop that keeps the ball in the infield, but then he'll throw the ball, airmail to first baseman or short hop to first baseman, or in any way, shape, or form, do in the first baseman. And what was a spectacular play turns out to be a double. So if they can, channel that, and he's cut. In fairness, he's cut down on that a lot. He now knows just take a bite out of the ball if you get it, and you can't get the guy. So I think the trade, the Nationals trade with Boston will hopefully serve both of them. And I think that the best trades are the ones that that benefit both teams if at all possible.
Yeah, it's typically tough to find teams that you both have surplus in an area of need for the other team. Those are hard to line up. In Boston, something that you would think makes Red Sox fans a little bit more optimistic going into this trade deadline would be Craig Breslow made comments as to it's tough to win a trade, and he's changing his thinking from last year. I think far too often he's been trying to win trades, and his change in thinking based on what he said in the media, and now it's a small sample size because obviously people are not going to spill their guts to the media ever. Is that they've kind of shifted away from a little bit of that, winning the trade and just trying to make the major league team better, which is I think refreshing because, and should be refreshing to see this deal get done, a week and almost a week and a half, a little less than a week and a half before the trade deadline. Because when you look at last year and what happened last year is Craig Breslow and the Boston Red Sox put all of their eggs in the Joe Ryan basket. And really thought that was the deal that was going to get done. And later they pivoted and they had to go get Dustin May, and that was a train wreck. And Steven Matz was an addition in the bullpen, and he was a solid addition. Nothing. He wasn't fantastic, but he also wasn't awful. He was just a good, solid reliever. But when you look at a deadline where it really felt like they had a chance to go in and add to that team and make that team better at the deadline. When you sit back and see that your deadline was Dustin May and Steven Matz, it feels like you were given a warm Diet Coke and a bag of Doritos when you were promised lobster and steak.
That's funny.
So I think it's important that they moved this quickly with the prices they were given, with Shea Langoliers getting hurt. I think them moving this fast is a really good sign for this deadline for Boston.
That's good. I mean, that's a good thing. Let's go through some of these. All right, we talked about Tampa Bay, New York, and Boston, uh, all needing some of the same things.
Mm-hmm.
We're, I think the Yankees. I don't know what the Yankees are going to do. Honestly, it seems like. Go ahead.
Bullpen is probably a place I would expect them to go, and they do need a catcher, but they need offense more than anything. Like you can sit here and talk about their injuries, and they just lost Cody Bellinger to the IL as well. Not sure how long he'll be out. I think Aaron Boone said it looks like it could be something, which I don't speak Boonese, so I don't know what that means exactly. But that offense and that team in general, and in terms of what the statistics look like at the end of the year, that it'll always be a debate for MVP. But Aaron Judge makes that offense. Aaron Judge makes that baseball team, because who they've been without him versus who they are with him are two different baseball teams. And so they need somebody that can come in and steady the ship with Judge out, with Bellinger now out as well. That offense is going to take a hit.
Yeah, and there's no way around it. For them, the Rays seem to be fixated on, and I don't know, I'm not sure how this is working out, but they want a starting pitcher to keep with the guys that they have so far, if that's possible. They got two catchers in the minor leagues that they don't want to, in some regards, they say they want to get a catcher, but then in other ways they've decided maybe not. Definitely, they're looking at a bat. I don't know. I mean, I have great respect for Nightingale and some of these other guys, who cover baseball on a regular basis for major publications, saying that Skubal is headed to Tampa Bay. I don't know that. I mean, it would not be an Eric Neandler move for that to happen. I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm just saying that's not the normal way they do things. I guess it all depends on the price.
Yeah, and I think Detroit, and just in speaking to Detroit specifically, they're now in a position where they really need to get rid of Tarek Skubal. They just lost a series to the Royals, and the Royals are the second worst team in the AL, if my math is correct on that. Things don't – their offense has improved, yes, but things don't seem to be turning around for them, even with the offensive improvement over the last month. They played well, but it's just not well enough. Like, from where they were, I think if you look back, a month now, you look at the Red Sox and the run they went on. They had to go on that run to be in the position where they are. Detroit needed a similar type run, and while they've had a very good run, it's not been good enough, I think, to get them in a position where they can justify holding on to Tarek Skubal, because when the season ends, he's not going to be wearing a Detroit Tigers uniform anymore. It's just a matter of whether or not you have a say and get something back in where he's not wearing a Detroit Tigers uniform, because the overwhelming odds are, and by overwhelming, I mean like 99% sure, that he will not be wearing a Detroit Tigers uniform next season, with whatever season we have. It's just a matter of whether or not you get a return on your player.
Right. Something that you can, somebody that you can plug in and say, okay, this is a guy that we can use now. And maybe some guy we can use later as well.
Yeah, and to circle back to Tampa Bay, they're a lineup that they know who they are, and that is important, and that is the reason that they have won their baseball games. But they are extremely reliant on their top three hitters, and Yandy Diaz,
Mm-hmm.
Aranda, and Junior Caminero.
Mm-hmm.
And if those guys don't hit, their offense goes stagnant because the guys at the bottom of the lineup are made to where, they can play small ball and they can get you some runs, but it's not going to be they don't have the power, they don't have the ability to score runs in
Right.
bunches. They're gonna scratch you across a run or two throughout the 9 innings of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you need, and that's what you bank on when you have the power on the top of that lineup.
Mm-hmm.
So they need a little bit more pop in the middle of that lineup to really kind of lengthen that lineup and make the grind of their bottom 5 or 6 players all the more difficult.
It's funny, the Ken Babby, who's the new CEO of the team, under the new ownership. Um, Babby was on the broadcast this weekend, and they were talking to him about trading. He goes, "Look, that's Eric Neandler's deal, not mine. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
My goal is to finish the stadium deal and keep things going." He goes, "But that being said, I've told Eric that we'll take on payroll," which is a phrase never before used by anybody in the Bay Area. Good afternoon, good to see you. And so to what extent that is, I don't know. But I guess what he's signaling, which other you know in other years, the concept of adding payroll to a raise the lineup was never something that was even discussed. Uh, and I think we agree with you. We definitely agree with you on that one. But I think the key is here, you know, what might be refreshing to Rays fans is that you know they have the possibility now of actually having somebody uh, that they can, they have somebody in management who's willing to write a check if it's the right deal.
Yeah, and when you look at the landscape of the American League,
Hmm.
this almost feels like when you have the alignment and ownership, like they appear to have, and they have the team and the record that they currently have. This is where you have to go. You're the best team in the American League,
Hmm.
With the lack, I guess, of talent in the American League. You've
Hmm.
been the best. You've been the best team in the American League because your pitching's that good and your top three's been that good.
Hmm.
Um, and that's the reason why you need to lengthen that lineup because you're pitching, albeit yes, they could add a starter and make that rotation a little bit better. But their top of the line pitching in terms of what you're going to get out of a 7 game series if they were to
Hmm.
make it to that point is some of the best. Nick Martinez and Drew Rasmussen have been fantastic for them. I think as Griffin Jacks goes throughout the year, continues to acclimate himself to the starter role, that's something that lengthens out your rotation as well. McClanahan's going to continue to get innings underneath his belt.
Hmm.
They do have to be careful in stretching him out too much, but
Hmm.
they have 4 legitimate options, I believe, at the top of their rotation.
Right.
And their bullpen, it's one of the best in baseball, if not the best in
Hmm.
baseball. Brian Baker, their closer, has been fantastic.
Hmm.
And so this is their opportunity. They have a clear window of need. The problem is that if they're going after catching, that catcher market just got all the more expensive with Langoliers going down. Goodman's price was not going to be cheap, originally, and that price went up. Ryan
Hmm.
Jeffers in Minnesota probably isn't going to be cheap. I mean, you look back to last year and the asking price, what has come out that the Boston Red Sox offered for Joe Ryan
Hmm.
at last year's deadline was Peyton Tolley and Franklin Arias. Those
Hmm.
were 2 prospects that were on the table in a deal. The Twins said no. Now the Twins look like absolute idiots for saying
Hmm.
no. Um, but you would assume if that was their thinking last year, you
Hmm.
have to assume that again they're going to be overvaluing these players. So you're going to have to pay a premium for Ryan Jeffers, and then your other option that may potentially be available would be Adley Rushman, who's on the IL, and then
Hmm.
you'd be convincing the Baltimore Orioles to make a trade in division.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. Um, I think they may have moved on from the catcher. I think now they just want, where can I find a bat that's consistent for us? And I've been told that they're looking over at the Giants, they're looking at the Rockies, they're looking at, you know, uh, was it the Giants or Rockies? Um, I believe a couple guys on Arizona. I mean, they're kind of just putting the scouts to work, looking at find me a bat that we can plug in here and get. I mean, as our buddy here, Bucks, in the house, was saying that the window's now. Okay, if you're going to win an American League championship for the Rays, it's now.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Giants, and I think the Giants are an interesting option because there's so much money that the Giants want to get rid of.
Right.
You mentioned their willingness to take on payroll. If you're willing to take on payroll and you don't want to pay a high prospect premium, you could probably have Rafael Devers and depending on how much money you're willing to take on, you could probably have him at a relatively cheap prospect cost, but it would cost you a little bit more on the payroll side of things. But that would give you another power bat in that lineup that could just DH because Aranda and Caminero and Diaz, they don't all fit in the field together. That's the problem. Because again, you're adding to a position now where Aranda plays first, Diaz plays first, and Caminero plays third. First and third are Devers' two positions that he's played primarily, and somebody's got a DH, and then you're getting into the neighborhood of like, where do we stick these guys?
Right. And you want them to play. You're not going to take Caminero off the field. That's
you could always circle back in the Giants, thinking and revisit old friend Willie Adames as well.
Right. No, there's no question about that. I think that's one of the things that's there. But I think that the good thing about Eric is he knows what he's doing, and he'll come out with something. We'll see whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but we definitely will see how that works out. Let's move. Let's say get the White Sox. We talked about the Guardians, the Twins. Texas is an absolute disaster. I don't see what's going on there. Seattle, and Seattle might be the biggest disappointment of any one of that group of teams in the American League.
Seattle's interesting because of the pitching surplus they have, and when I say surplus, they have a top of the line surplus in terms of their pitching. Emerson Hancock's been very good, and they've made him available. Said he's the one pitcher from their rotation, from their pitching surplus that they're willing to trade. And you look at guys around the league and guys that are going to be available. Mason Miller is a guy I think they will be interested in. They would have to add more to Hancock, obviously, to get that deal done. But that's a place they could go. And Emerson Hancock is a name that is going to be powerful enough to make a significant addition if they are willing to add some prospects on the back end. That they have to be willing to kind of go back in and, I mean, really take advantage of what, has been a down year for Seattle, but a year in which they can still very easily win the division because as good as Houston's been, their pitching has been not very good. And as good as Texas has been, it's just a product that you don't really believe in. I mean, you went down there and you lost a series, but is that a team that you really believe is going to be able to go and take that division? I don't.
So let's cut. I'm looking at the wild card right now. Obviously, the Yankees are in there. They're plus 6 games ahead of the Red Sox, who is plus a game and a half ahead of Cleveland. Cleveland's at the cut line. Behind them, 1 game is Minnesota. Behind them by a game and a half is the Mariners. And behind them by 2 games is Houston. And behind them by 2.5 games is Baltimore.
Yeah. And this is a situation where I think there needs to be some level when it comes to the wild card race. Some general managers are going to have to be honest with themselves and honest with the team and look at where the team is and be real about where their position is in terms of the playoffs. Like, do the people in Minnesota really believe that, yes, they're a game and a half out? Do they really think this is a team that can make a run in the playoffs? I don't think it is. And in a seller's market where there aren't many, you have a potential to capitalize on what may be a higher value on your position players than what would normally be. There's going to be a higher value on Ryan Jeffers at catcher because there is a bunch of teams that are catcher needy, and there's not a lot of catchers available.
Right.
And do you really think that, holding on to Ryan Jeffers is going to make or break this season and is going to make or break your future? I think you could be more advantageous, looking forward as opposed to holding on to him for now.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're looking at the Dodgers in the National League. I think they're going to go out and get a starting pitcher. I don't think they need anything else. They may not need a starting pitcher, but that's where they're headed. The Brewers, I don't know what the Brewers are going to do. They tend not to make any big splash moves in the trade deadline. They usually stand pat, or if they do, it's a small move. And then we have the Braves. This is a team that not a lot of people expected to be there, and probably better than anybody what are the strengths and the weaknesses of the Braves.
They are in dire need of pitching. Dire need of pitching, starting pitching specifically. Mm-hmm. And that's where you're going to look to. And I think they got some help over the past week in the way the Toronto Blue Jays have played, because I think they played themselves into being sellers. They're 10 games under 500 right now.
Right.
There are pieces there that you could see. Kevin Gossman is one of them.
Sure.
Michael Wacha in Kansas City is going to be another guy. But these are guys that you can go out and get that have pitched really well this season that you can get for, I would say, relatively cheap. I would say you're getting a cost-effective option.
Yeah.
But they need starting pitching. I think they need some bullpen help as well. They're not going to be focused on the bats. Ronald Acuna Jr. just got activated today. That's a guy that's going to come in and help that offense that honestly hasn't needed a whole lot of help. They've scuffled a little bit over the past month, but they're still a team that's able to win baseball games, still a team that's in control of their division right now. And when I say in control of their division, the Mets have been playing terribly. The Nationals are who the Nationals are. The Marlins are okay. I would put the Phillies, or I put the Nationals and the Marlins kind of in that same tier of they're good, but they don't really scare you for the division right now. And then the Philadelphia Phillies haven't played fantastic over the last month either, which has allowed the Atlanta to maintain that division lead that they have. And if you go out and you get a little bit healthier in the lineup, which they're doing with Acuna coming back, and they go out and they add starting pitching, that's I'd say clear-cut NL East winner and a team that is more than capable of challenging the Dodgers for the NL crown.
It's what is okay? He's talking about. Do you think the Angels would move Trout? I think the Angels would move Trout if. I mean, his contract is pretty convoluted.
Mike Trout has to approve a trade, and I'm willing to bet he's not dying to move down to the Tampa market.
No, I'm not. Yeah, I don't know where he's moving. I don't know that. I mean, he's had opportunities to go, back to Philly and all kinds of places. For whatever the reason, he seems to be very loyal to Artie Moreno. And they've got a new ownership group there. And so, as much as Mike has, been in talks over the years, I mean, not him, but his name has been bandied about. He's never really been moved. And so I don't think that, I don't know many people, to be honest, that contract that he's got is in the $400 million range in that situation. I know some of it's deferred money, but I mean, it's just a very convoluted contract. And I don't think anybody at the trade deadline, the last thing you want to do is be, spending hours with your legal team figuring out just exactly how much his money do we owe him and how do we make this work.
Yeah, and I think the Phillies are in an odd position because I think they could use to add an outfielder.
Mm-hmm.
And the two that they would go after are two that I think would only waive their no trade clause
Mm-hmm.
for Philadelphia, and that would be Byron Buxton and Mike Trout. But
Right.
it requires a willingness of them to waive the no trade clause,
Mm-hmm.
and it still is going to require, more specifically for Byron Buxton, a lot of prospect return. Um, and so, are they willing to pay the price of those contracts? Are these guys willing to waive their no trade clauses?
Mm-hmm.
And are they willing to take on the money? Those deals feel so complicated and so far
Mm-hmm.
off that they feel like they're really hard to make, and really only makeable in Philly.
What do you think of Foster Griffin? Is what we get the question on.
Uh, yeah, the extension talks with the Nationals had apparently
Mm-hmm.
quickly. Fizzled quickly, I believe, was the phrase that was used in regards to the extension talks in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so he's going to be a piece that is potentially available. But again, this is a guy that's 11-2. He's pitched really well this season. It's going to take, once again, significant prospect return to get this deal done. It does Tampa want to give up significant prospect return? It's not something where they'd be taking on payroll. It's something where you're talking about dealing from the farm system there. And I don't know if they're going to be willing to pay that prospect premium on Foster Griffin.
I would doubt. I would doubt it. I would. Honestly, as crazy as it sounds, I think they'd take Scooble over him because I think that the price they would have to pay Detroit to get Scooble is less than what they would have to pay to get Griffin.
Yeah, I think you're correct because Griffin, I may be remembering this incorrectly, but I believe Griffin still has another year or two left of
He's got
control
at least
after
one.
this season.
Yeah,
Yeah, after
he's
this season.
controlled for one more year.
So you add that extra year of control. Yeah, I would say your prospect get back is going to be a little bit more costly in Washington than it would be for Scooble, which feels crazy to say.
Yeah.
But there is a knowledge. Like if you're Tampa Bay and you trade for Tarek Skubal, the overwhelming odds are is that he's also not going to be wearing a Tampa Bay jersey next season. I think that's where a team like Milwaukee is going to struggle as well because the odds
Mm-hmm.
would be that Tarek Skubal wouldn't be wearing a Brewers jersey again next season. But both teams, I think, with where they are in their division races, with where they
Mm-hmm.
are in reference to the rest of their why am I blanking on the AL and NL,
Mm-hmm.
whichever side of the coin they're on, they're in good standing to go win the pennant on both
Right.
sides. But they're not teams that are going to be able to pay Tarek Skubal what Tarek Skubal is going to want next offseason.
And one of the things that both of those teams have is a surplus of very good, talented prospects, and they can afford to, send a couple of prospects, to get Tarek Skubal, and not worry about the fact that he's only a 4-month rental or 3-month rental.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're the Brewers, you have to look at this and remember what CC Sabathia did for you a few
Right.
years ago.
Mm.
That's really where, and this is also a deadline for the Brewers where they've done nothing and they've sat on their hands with talented teams.
Mm-hmm.
This may be their most talented team in terms of what they've done record wise.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels like a position where you need to go capitalize on it because you have been as good as they have been, and they've been fantastic
Mm-hmm.
this year. It's time to bring in some reinforcements that isn't, a utility player and a pitcher that's pitched to a
Right.
4 ERA on who knows where.
When we look at the wild card in the National League, it's the Cubs, it's the Phillies, and it's the Diamondbacks right now. The Pirates, Nationals, and Cardinals are all one game out.
Mm-hmm.
San Diego's 2 out, Miami's 3 out, and the Reds are 5 out.
San Diego, I know they're close. They have to be real with themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They have so much bad money on contracts. They have to be able to kind of move some of that around. I don't think that they've been shy about the fact that they have some bad deals going on right now. Manny Machado has not. He's played better, but he's still not been Manny Machado. Xander Bogaerts has not played fantastically. Um, is it a case where you maybe are trying to move one of them with Mason Miller to try to get off some bad money, and maybe eat a little bit of that prospect return? So they need. I know they're not that far out. Those teams ahead of them are very good.
Mhm.
And I think with the way their offense is played, they just have to be they need to be realistic. And I know it's not not in their DNA based off what they've done in the past
Mhm.
years to be realistic with anything, but their unrealistic signings and trades have led them to where they're in a money hole out of a wild card, and
Mhm.
and no true vision for the future right now.
I don't think they're gonna. I mean, I don't think they're gonna last in August. I don't think August is gonna be kind to the Padres. Um,
No.
I saw the Pirates game over the weekend. One of them, I forget which one it was. Might have been Friday or Saturday. Anyway, 36,000 one night, 33,000 the next. Um, the general manager was on the broadcast and said, we realized that, you know, we need to do something to make the playoffs.
Hmm.
And you've got two teams in Pittsburgh and Washington who are ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
So what do you do if you're the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Washington Nationals? Um, to, I mean, you're starting to gain your fans back. You don't want to piss them off. But then again, what are you going to do to get? I mean, making the playoffs is nice. Okay, there's no. I'm not saying that's not a good thing, but making the playoffs and then what do you what do you what do you lose by trying to put together a package like this and end up losing some prospects?
Yeah, I think Pittsburgh's in a little better position, and I think they feel like a more complete team than Washington is,
Okay.
and part of
Mhm.
that has to do with where they're at in terms of their aging. Washington has a couple of guys that they're not on their deals aren't expiring this year, but in terms of they don't have many years left on their deals,
Mhm.
and talk about Foster Griffin, talk about C.J. Abrams. Those are two guys that
Mhm.
while they're not their deals aren't done this year, they're guys that are going to be tough to extend. And I think that's where the difference is in Pittsburgh and Washington. And
Mhm.
really, talk about Washington and just how bad their pitching has been. I think Pittsburgh feels more complete because they've got there's pluses that you can look at on both sides. And really with the immersion of Valdez as Merlin Valdez, I believe.
Mhm.
I hope I said that correct.
Yeah.
And how good he's been in their offense. Their offense has become more complete. They've
Mhm.
scored more runs now. And so it feels like a product that you can buy into, and you can maybe fix some of the holes a little bit easier than you can in Washington.
Yeah. I think a lot of people in both cities want to see the team in the playoffs, but they also want to see incremental growth beyond this year.
Yeah.
Making it to playoffs, exiting and saying it's been fun. Ask the Cincinnati Reds what that was like.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And Cincinnati's now in back into a hole.
The team that I'm curious about, and we'll end it on this for the today anyway. The team that interests me the most about what the hell they're going to do at the deadline is the Mets.
They have to sell everybody. Like Freddie Peralta has to be
They're
dealt.
not getting. They can't get rid of Soto. That contract is
No.
that's not that ain't going anywhere.
Well, I don't think they want it to go anywhere.
No, I'm just
But
saying that if you put them out there, you know.
yeah, I think everybody's available. Like almost everyone's going to be available, with the exception of some of their young guys.
Mhm.
Ewing, I believe, is the correct name. He's one that's not going to be touched. Nolan McLean's not going to be touched. Juan Soto's not going to be touched. A lot of those young guys. But those guys at the back of the bullpen, Devin Williams, Luke Weaver, those are guys that are going to be available. Francisco Lindor, you at least have to listen on. Bo Bichette, I'm sure they would love to get out from under Luis Roberts' contract. Everybody is going to be available. Freddie Peralta has to be dealt. He's on the end of his deal. You can still get some good prospect return because his starts have looked a little bit better as of late. He's not the same pitcher that he was in Milwaukee this year, but he's still a guy that can fetch you a good return. They have to be sellers. There's no magical run coming for New York. There's no – you're not going to have the OMG Mets or anything like that. It's not coming back. You have to be realistic. And as disappointing as this season's been, because there was an article that was released today that said everybody – their eyes were set on October and spring training. In fact, one player had apparently told his family, don't make any plans expecting me to be there in October. I won't.
Right.
So, you now have to really kind of recalibrate yourself, recalibrate your mind in New York and understand that this one didn't work either. Like, you've tried it back-to-back years. This one didn't work either. I guess go back to the drawing board, sell some pieces off, and spend a crap ton more money hoping that it works again next year.
I heard Joel Sherman, who covers the Mets and Yankees about as well as anybody, said to Lindor and Bo Bichette, if anybody were willing to take the contracts that they, that the return in assets from your minor league system is not going to be a big deal for them.
And
they just went out from under the money.
I think the biggest thing is that with Bo Bichette in particular, obviously they want to get out from under Lindor's money. But Bichette has player options. I believe, if I remember correctly, they're at $40 million a year. Those are his player options. And the guy that he's been has not been a $40 million a year player. That's I don't think I would get any pushback on that. And so all signs would point to him accepting that option because you don't think he's getting that same kind of money on the open market. So you want to get out from under him because of what he's probably going to opt into next year.
Yeah. And, he had a lot of triggers in that contract that were very attainable. And so, you end up, a lot of people, when they don't, they see your contract, they don't realize that, if you reach a certain, if your batting average is above, what it was last year or something, they're attainable $1 million goals. And there's like incentivizing the contract. That's something that for right now has been something that, Lindor has and Bo Bichette has. And, they would prefer, I'm sure, to get them off the books before the season ends. So if there's any escalators on that contract, it doesn't hit their bottom line. But they're going to have to eat money.
Yeah, they absolutely are. Which, in terms of a willingness to build a winner, Steve Cohen has not been shy about spending his money. So if that's what it takes, I'm sure if that's what your long-term vision is, then Steve Cohen's probably going to be willing to eat some money again.
Yeah, but here's the thing with Steve Cohen, right? You can want to spend all the money in the world, but if you don't have a front office that understands how to make it work, it doesn't matter. And to me, the front office of the Mets has been an absolute and total disaster.
Yeah, I'm blanking on his name right now, the Mets general manager. But I would be shocked if he does not lose his job this offseason. To be honest, I'm a little bit surprised that Steve Cohen's willing to let him run a deadline with the way that he's operated these last couple of years, because money has not been in short supply. Prospects in terms of what they could trade off has not been in short supply either. And yet here they sit, outside, not only outside of a playoff race, but well outside of a playoff race with a product on the field that at times has just looked downright embarrassing. And so it feels like it's time to go back to the drawing board if you're New York.
David Strems is the general manager, by the way.
Yeah. David Stearns, I'm shocked that he still has a job right now.
probably as shocked as he is. It's one of those situations where you get. I just don't understand how you can have that talented and that expensive a roster and end up, and they're going to end up, you know, how do you explain being behind the Nationals, the Marlins, and the and the who am I forgetting? Nationals, the Marlins, well, the Phillies for sure. We know that.
Mhm.
Uh, so yeah, I mean they're going to be the last place in the division they were expected to win. It's one
Yeah,
thing not to. It's not one thing not to win the division. Okay, that happens.
yeah.
But to finish last place in the division, the
Especially
third
with some
highest
of
payroll in baseball.
not only do you have the highest payroll, but you've gotten really good contributions from young players that have been called up from the
Hmm.
minors. Like you've been able to supplement via the minors, but your major
Hmm.
league talent has been that bad that the supplementation from the minors just hasn't mattered.
Hmm. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Well, tomorrow we'll have an opportunity to come back and talk. And
Maybe we'll have some
Buffalo
deals.
gang in the house. Thanks so much for joining us. We greatly appreciate your input today. And you know, the saga we got. Well, tomorrow we'll have 1 week, and I think that things are going to start getting done earlier than the frenetic day of situations we've had in the past.
Yeah, I'm ready
So
to see some deals.
there you go. Well, and you know what? If they don't make them, we'll make them for them. So
Yep.
there you go. All right, everybody have a great day. Hope you enjoyed, and we shall return tomorrow.